Today we have a pretty exciting video because one of my favorite light manufacturers, Zhiyun, released a updated version to my favorite of their lights, the X100 RGB, and that is the X200 RGB. This light is brand new, has a lot of cool features and a lot of upgrades that kind of perturbed me about the X100. So we're gonna go through all of those in this first look video, so let's get into it. Alright, quick disclosure, Zhiyun did send me this light and are the sponsors of this video, so it's not going to be a full review and definitely not an objective review, but instead sort of a first look. But I actually reached out to Zhiyun earlier this year because I like their lights so much and wanted to know if they wanted to sponsor some videos. So yes, we've done some product reviews and we've done some first looks at their gear, but they've also been nice enough to sponsor a lot of different tutorials and lighting setups. And so thanks to Zhiyun for sponsoring this channel and actually making this channel even possible, because without sponsors like them, I wouldn't be here anymore. I would just go and do other work that makes way more money. So if you've watched this channel over the course of the 2 years that I've been doing it, you know that I love Zhiyun lights, and as someone who travels a lot for documentary and branded content work, their lights are small, portable, but still very powerful, and so I take them on a lot of shoots. Right here I have the G200 lighting me as my key light, and also the X60, which is doing the little splash of light on the back wall, and two tube lights from Zhiyun that are also putting that splash of light on the wall. So I have a lot of different Zhiyun lights. I've bought most of them with my own money, and they are really great for a lot of different scenarios. Probably my favorite light they've ever released is this one right here, the Zhiyun X100 RGB. The original X100 was the exact same size, and then Cam Mackey wanted to make it look all sleek and fancy and special. So they made an RGB version, which honestly was a pretty darn big upgrade. I've done a video on this light, so you can check that on my channel. But the reason I love this light so much is because it's so tiny. I mean, it is razor thin, but still has 100 watts of power. So in a lot of travel documentary scenarios can still be a really good key light. And it also had this really neat battery pack that you stuck on the side like so, and you could power this light for almost an hour at full power, but obviously longer if you just need a splash of light, and you could just hand hold this like this and get some nice lighting in, you know, different various scenes. But it's always nicer to have more power and more light, and that is where the brand new updated X200 RGB comes in. So here is the package from the X200 RGB, and this thing has some really cool features. So let's pull everything on the table and then I'll go through each piece one by one. All right, so here it is. This is the X200 RGB. It is a 200 watt light from Zhiyun, and as you can tell right away, it's a good bit chunkier than the X100, but you know, it's double the power, double the brightness, and therefore about double the size, maybe a little less than, you know, twice the size of the X100, but it still has a very similar form factor. And so if you wanted to mount this onto a boom arm or even on a smaller light stand, if you're not traveling with bigger C stands, then, you know, this is still very lightweight, very travel friendly, and will probably be my new travel key light. Now, there are a few things from the X100 that I really wanted to see improved, and they've done it all here on the X200. The first is there is now a built-in Bowens mount. So if you use any sort of light, you know Bowens mount is definitely the most useful type of mount. So you can put a bunch of different soft boxes and modifiers on this light, no problem. The second is the way that the light is actually powered. So obviously you can use the battery system that I mentioned before on the X100, but if you wanted to power it with normal DC in, the X100 had this little flap that you pulled open at the bottom, and a port that was non-locking would stick in right here. And the non-locking was a little bit of an issue. If you just got it snagged on something, that thing would pop out really easy. And so it was not a very secure connection, which was always a bit of a bummer, and you always had to be pretty careful on how you mounted this light so that that cord didn't pop out. Now, the X200 is powered in a much more secure way. You take this small module on the side and connect that in like so, and then you have a much more powerful and secure AC in right here. That thing's not coming out. Nice right angle, so that obviously if this is mounted on a light, then the cord actually hangs off the light. So as you can see, it's a much more secure way to power this light. So you probably think this is a pretty unusual and unique way to actually have a module on the side of a light, and you would be correct, but you can pop this off, and on the side of the light right here is a V-mount receptor. And so if you wanted to power this light with a battery, you could. You could take this V-mount 150 and just slot it in the side, and suddenly, bam, you have a 200 watt light that is being powered by V-mount, which is pretty darn cool. So now if you're doing some remote shooting, then you could actually power this light for a good amount of time with a large 150 watt battery. You can only go to 75% power when you're on a V mount, but that still gives you a pretty good amount of runtime at a pretty darn bright light. That's not the end of the ways you can power this light. So you can also use a USB-C cable, but probably the most exciting along with the V-mount side handle is this awesome accessory from Zhiyun, which is a grip that goes onto your actual light stand and then has two V-mount plates on the side. So if you wanted to have longer run times, you could take two V-mount batteries and have 300 watts of power if you had two 150s on either side, hook this to your light stand, and then actually connect it to your light at the top of the stand, and you could run this thing off battery power for a good amount of time. So once you have your two V-mounts on there, then you can just plug in this adapter cable here, and then run this cable to the main light, keeping the light really small and lightweight, which is also nice. And now suddenly you have light. And so you can power your light with these two V-mounts and this cable, which is a really, really cool feature. So with the two V-mounts, you can go to 100% power, which is pretty darn bright. This is probably my favorite part of this light. The fact that I can power it with one V-mount on the side of the light or two V-mounts on the light stand. It makes it very portable, and then you can actually use this when you don't have access to mains power, which is really, really nice. All right, so 98% of the time when I'm using lights like this, I'm just using it on different color temperatures. And so this thing does have a really wide range. It goes from 2,500 all the way up to 10,000. I would say probably most of the time I'll be at either 5,600 for daylight or 3,200 for your standard tungsten. And then it also has a green and magenta shift. So if you did want to shift that part of the light, you can do that and just change things to be a little bit greener or a little bit more magenta. While I'm talking about this, the physical dials on this light are also really nice. So it has two dials, and they're actually different colors and different sizes. And I think most lights have the same color and size for a lot of the different functions, which can get a little confusing. I'm always trying to randomly guess whether I'm changing the Kelvin temperature or whether I'm actually changing the output. So the nice thing about this one is the top lever does pretty much everything in terms of going through the different features. So if I'm changing color output or intensity, and then the bottom one cycles through the different options. So if I want to go over to intensity, then I just use the orange one. And if I want to change the intensity, then I use the taller black one. And so it's really nice to have that color coded, and actually already it's way simpler to get through your different menu functions. The orange one goes through the different modes of the light. So this obviously is our standard color temperature. And if we click it, then we can go into advanced HSI. So if you really want to dial in your color, you can do that with this RGB light, but you can also go into normal RGB mode and choose the intensity of your reds, blues, and greens. So that's 100% red, that's adding 50% green, and so obviously you can dial in pretty much any color you want. And then finally, it has your sort of standard effects. So it has explosion, fire, paparazzi, TV flicker, lightning, strobe, welding. Ooh, welding, that's cool. That's a new one. Then you can click to go into each specific effect and then tune that effect however you want. So back to 100%, you can change the color temperature of this fire, and it'd be a very weird, cool fire. The light also comes with a Fresnel, also in standard Bowens mount, so you could use this on any light that has a Bowens mount and still has a really small and travel-friendly package. So there you go, the brand new light from Zhiyun, the X200 RGB. And honestly, this is a really cool upgrade from the X100 and probably is going to be my new favorite travel light. This is something that's small and lightweight enough that if you just wanted to use it on mains and power, then you just take this with you and you have a really tiny 200 watt light. But the fact that I can also power it with V-mounts, which I often have on me to power a lot of my other camera equipment, is really nice, even if it's just for a quick 30-minute scene or something I need just a little bit of light but don't have access to mains. And thanks again to Zhiyun for not only sending this light so that I can give you a first look, but also for sponsoring a lot of educational material on this channel. So if you like this light and want to pick one up for yourself, check out the code in the description below for a percentage off of your first purchase. Is this the type of light that you could use in your own work, or do you travel a lot for work and need a light this size and weight? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video. 100%.